Hello, welcome to the Sleepy Bible Odyssey channel. We are gently arriving now at the fifth session of the I Am statements of Jesus. Together we have walked through the bread of life, the light of the world, the gate, and the Good Shepherd. Each one has been a different window into the same loving presence, meeting our hunger, our confusion, our longing for safety, and our deep need to be known by name. Tonight we come to the statement that reaches deeper than all the others, the one that touches the very thing every human heart eventually fears or carries: death, and the grief that follows. This is for the one lying awake tonight in the particular shape of loss, in the changed stillness of the room, in the first Monday after, the quiet anniversary, or even years later when the world has moved on, but your heart has not. This is for the anticipatory grief too, when you already feel the coming loss sitting heavy in your chest before it has fully arrived. Before we go any further, I want to simply sit with you here for a moment. The grief is real, dear one. The loss is real. That specific, irreplaceable person who was here and now is not, whose absence has its own weight, its own shape, its own daily texture. They were real. Your grief is not too much. It is not a lack of faith. It is the love that has nowhere else to go, and it is holy. Jesus knew this kind of grief deeply. He knew it before Lazarus ever died. He knew it when Mary collapsed at his feet, sobbing. He knew it standing outside the tomb. And the gospel does not rush past the pain to get to the miracle. It pauses and tells us something beautiful and heartbreaking. Jesus wept. The shortest verse in the Bible carries such tenderness. The one who was about to call Lazarus back to life first allowed the tears to fall. Real tears, not performed. He wept with Mary. He wept with the mourners. He wept because the love was real, the loss was real, and the cost of death mattered to him. Even the one who is the resurrection and the life does not treat our sorrow lightly. Tonight's story is the story of Lazarus, the long 4 days in the tomb, the two sisters who sent for Jesus and waited in agony, the arrival that seemed far too late by every human standard, and the sacred I Am that Martha heard while standing in the shadow of the grave, the words that quietly changed everything about what too late could mean. And let's spend this hour with the I Am who stands at the edge of the grave, with the Jesus who wept there with you before he spoke life. Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live, and everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die." Do you believe this? John 11:25-26. When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews also weeping which came with her, he groaned in the spirit, and was troubled, and said, "Where have ye laid him?" They said unto him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus wept. John 11:33-35. Jesus called in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. John 11:43-44. He will swallow up death forever. The sovereign Yahweh will wipe away the tears from all faces. Isaiah 25:8. I am the living one. I was dead, and now look, I am alive forever and ever, and I hold the keys of death and Hades. Revelation 1:18. I am the resurrection and the life. 2 words, 2 claims, held together in the single I am. The resurrection is the reversal of death, the bringing back of the one who has died, the restoration of the life that death has ended. In the first century Jewish world, the resurrection was an expected future event. The general resurrection of the dead at the end of the age, the restoration of all who had died in faith to the life that death had interrupted. The Pharisees believed in it. The Sadducees did not. Martha herself holds the standard Jewish hope. I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus says something more specific than the general resurrection. I am the resurrection. Not, I will bring about the resurrection. Not, I have authority over the resurrection. I am the resurrection. The resurrection is not an event that Jesus controls. It is a reality that Jesus is. The raising of the dead is not something he does at the end of the age as an exercise of divine authority. It is something he is all the way through at every moment in the present tense of the I am, who has no before or after. And the life. The life is the second half of the claim, and the more radical half. Resurrection addresses death after it has occurred. The life addresses the condition of the person who is still living. Everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. The life that Jesus is the source of is the life that death cannot interrupt. The life that is not the biological functioning of the body, but the participation in the existence of the I am, who cannot be interrupted. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. The dying happens. The death is real. The grief is real. The tomb is real. And on the other side of the real death, the yet, the shall he live. The biological life ends. The life that Jesus is the source of does not. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. The second claim is even larger. The person who is alive right now, who is breathing and present and in the grief or the ordinary day, or the specific middle-of-the-night condition of the person lying awake, this person, living and believing, shall never die. The death that would interrupt the life is the biological death. The life that shall never die is the life that the I am provides, the participation in the existence of the one who simply is. Do you believe this? The question Jesus asks Martha, the direct, specific, completely personal question placed at the end of the greatest theological claim in the Gospel of John, is the pivot of the whole story. The I am statement is not offered as a theological proposition to be assented to. It is offered as a question to be answered by the specific, grieving person standing outside the tomb where her brother has been for 4 days. Do you believe this? Now a man named Lazarus was sick. The story begins simply. A man named Lazarus, the brother of Mary and Martha, is sick. The sisters send word to Jesus, "Lord, the one you love is sick." The message is not a request. It does not say, "Please come, please heal him, please hurry." It is the simple declaration of the condition to the one whose knowing of the condition is the sufficient basis for the action. The one you love is sick. You know what to do." And Jesus stayed where he was 2 more days. This is the sentence that has troubled readers across 2,000 years. He stayed. He received the message and he stayed. The one he loved was sick and was dying, and Jesus stayed where he was for 2 more days before beginning the journey to Bethany. When he arrived, Lazarus had been in the tomb 4 days. 4 days. In the Jewish tradition of the 1st century, 4 days was the specific, important detail. There was a belief that the soul of the dead person remained near the body for 3 days before finally departing. By the 4th day, the death was completely beyond the possibility of reversal by any normal means. The corruption had begun. The body was irreversibly dead. Martha heard that Jesus was coming and went out to meet him. Mary stayed at home. 2 sisters, 2 ways of carrying the grief. Martha, the practical one, the one who in Luke's account was the worker while Mary sat at Jesus' feet, goes out to meet him. Active even in the grief, moving toward him. And her first words are both the honest expression of the loss and the declaration of the faith that the loss has not destroyed. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." The "if you had been here" is the grief speaking. The grief that has been sitting with the 4 days, that has watched the hope of the arrival drain away as the days passed and Jesus did not come. If you had been here. The specific, honest, completely real expression of the person who needed him and who waited and who watched the waiting fail to produce the coming in time. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. The even now. The grief and the faith held simultaneously by the woman who has lost her brother and who has not lost her trust. The faith that does not require the outcome she hoped for in order to remain faith. The even now, after the death, after the 4 days, after the hope has run out by every human measure, even now. And then Mary came. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." The same words, both sisters, the same grief saying the same thing in its own way. And Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her were weeping. And the Gospel records what happened next in 3 stages. He groaned in the spirit and was troubled. He said, "Where have you laid him?" Jesus wept. The one who was 2 days away from raising Lazarus stood at the edge of the grief and wept. The shortest verse in the Bible. 2 words. The fullest possible testimony to the genuineness of the humanity of the one who is also the I Am. The one who knows the end of the story is weeping at the middle of it, because the middle of it is real, and the grief is real, and the tears of Mary and the mourners are the tears of the people who loved Lazarus and who have lost him, and the losing is genuinely costly. The Jews saw it. See how he loved him. And then Jesus came to the tomb and commanded the stone to be taken away. And Martha objected. By this time there is a bad smell. And Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" They took away the stone, And Jesus looked up and prayed, and then called in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." And the dead man came out. The resurrection hope runs through the Hebrew Scriptures like a thread that is sometimes thin and sometimes thick, but never entirely absent. It begins with the specific, hard-won faith of individual voices. Job, in the middle of the most comprehensive suffering available, the loss of the children, the health, the wealth, the standing, arrives at a declaration that has sustained the grieving for 3,000 years. I know that my Redeemer lives, and that in the end he will stand on the earth. And after my skin has been destroyed, yet in my flesh I will see God. Job 19:25-26. Written in the context of the person who has lost everything and who cannot see the way through. The "I know that my Redeemer lives" is the faith that is not dependent on the circumstances being favorable. The "yet in my flesh I will see God" is the resurrection hope expressed not as a theological proposition, but as the personal testimony of the person who has nothing left but the conviction. Isaiah 25 takes the resurrection hope and makes it cosmic. He will swallow up death forever. The sovereign Yahweh will wipe away the tears from all faces. He will remove his people's disgrace from all the earth. The swallowing up of death, the specific, violent, completely final reversal of the power that has defined the human condition since the garden. Not the managing of death, not the consolation for death, the swallowing, the elimination, the forever. And Daniel 12 makes it eschatological, the resurrection as the event at the end of the age. Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. The multitudes who sleep in the dust. The resurrection is not the resuscitation of the individual corpse. It is the awakening of the multitudes, the restoration of the community of the dead to the life that death interrupted. The sleeping in the dust as the condition that the resurrection reverses. And then Jesus stands outside the tomb of Lazarus and says, "I am the resurrection." The resurrection that the tradition had located at the end of the age, the great awakening, the multitudes rising from the dust, Jesus claims as his identity in the present tense. The I am, who is the resurrection, is the one who can bring the resurrection into the present, who can call Lazarus out of the tomb on an ordinary afternoon in Bethany 2,000 years before the end of the age. The resurrection is not only a future hope, it is a present person, and the person is standing outside the tomb, having just wept, asking for the stone to be taken away. I know that my Redeemer lives. Job said it. Martha is about to see it, and the person carrying the loss tonight is invited to hold both, the I know of the long-carried faith, and the seeing that the resurrection and the life promises on the other side of the stone. The resurrection and the life I am offers the person in grief two things that must be held together: the permission to grieve fully, and the hope that stands on the other side of the grief. These two are not in tension. They are the same story. The story of Jesus standing at the tomb of Lazarus, weeping first and raising second. The grief and the resurrection are not the alternatives. The grief is the honest receiving of the loss. The resurrection is the honest receiving of what stands on the other side of the loss. Jesus held both. The shortest verse in the Bible and the loudest command at the tomb, both Jesus. The grief and the come out, both the same person. The permission to grieve fully is what the weeping gives. Jesus saw Mary weeping and he wept. He did not say, "Why are you weeping?" He knows the answer. She is weeping because her brother is dead. He did not say, "Do not weep, I am about to raise him." He wept. The one who held the resurrection in his identity wept at the tomb because the grief is real and the loss is real and the 4 days are real and the tears of the people who loved Lazarus are the appropriate response to the appropriate cost of the loving. The grief is not the failure of the faith. The grief is the love that has nowhere to go. The grief is the measure of what was genuinely there, the specific, irreplaceable, completely particular person whose not presence now has the weight and the shape that their presence had. Jesus did not weep at a general human mortality. He wept at Lazarus specifically, because he loved Lazarus specifically. See how he loved him. The specific love is the specific grief, and then the hope. I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. The yet shall he live on the other side of the though he die. The death is not denied. It is real. The 4 days are real. The bad smell is real. The stone is real. And the one who is the resurrection is standing outside the tomb asking for the stone to be moved. Do you believe this? The question that Jesus asked Martha is the question that is being asked tonight. Not the general theological question, do you believe in the resurrection as a concept? The specific, personal, completely direct question to the person who is outside the specific tomb of their specific grief. Do you believe this? Martha's answer is one of the most honest confessions in the New Testament. Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. Yes, I believe. And then the tears when she went to get Mary, and the falling at his feet, and the if you had been here again. The belief and the grief together, neither cancelling the other, both present simultaneously, both received by the one who is the resurrection and who wept at the tomb. The grief is received. The hope is real. The stone can be moved. The psychological research on grief, one of the most extensively studied human experiences, offers 3 findings that speak directly to what the resurrection and life I am provides. The first concept is the psychology of continuing bonds. The grief researcher Klaas, Silverman, and Nickman challenged the traditional Freudian model of grief. The model that said healthy grieving required the withdrawal of emotional energy from the deceased and the reinvestment of that energy in new relationships. The research consistently showed that the traditional model was wrong. The healthiest grievers are not the people who successfully detach from the deceased. They are the people who maintain a continuing bond, an ongoing, evolving relationship with the memory and the meaning of the person they have lost. The continuing bond does not prevent the movement through the grief. It is the movement through the grief. The person who maintains the bond, who speaks to the deceased, who keeps the person present through the memory and the story and the ongoing relationship, grieves more fully and heals more completely than the person who attempts the detachment the traditional model required. The resurrection and the life I am is the ultimate continuing bond. The person who is alive and believes in me shall never die. The continuing bond that the resurrection establishes is not the psychological bond of the memory. It is the theological bond of the participation in the existence of the one who is life. The person who has died in the belief is not the person who has detached from the living. The bond continues. The relationship continues, in a form that the grief cannot currently perceive, but that the I am declares is real. The practical application: the grief does not require the detachment. The bond does not have to be severed. The ongoing relationship with the person who has died, in the memory, in the prayer, in the specific and deliberate keeping of the person's presence alive, is not the failure to grieve correctly. It is the grief doing what healthy grief does. And the I am, who is the resurrection and the life, holds the bond on the other side that the continuing bond is reaching toward. The second concept is the research on meaning-making in grief. The grief researcher Robert Niemeyer and colleagues have studied the process of meaning-making in loss, the specific challenge of the bereaved person to reconstruct a sense of meaning, identity, and purpose in the world that the death has altered. The research consistently shows that the inability to make meaning of the loss is the strongest predictor of complicated grief, the grief that does not move through but becomes stuck. The meaning-making is not the explaining of the death, the finding of a reason why this person died at this time in this way. The meaning-making is the integration of the loss into the ongoing narrative of the life, the finding of who the person is now that the one who was lost is not there, the discovering of what the life means in the changed landscape that the death has produced. Do you believe this? The question Jesus asked Martha is the meaning-making question. The I am the resurrection, and the life is the framework into which the loss can be integrated, not as the explanation of why Lazarus died, but as the context that holds the death and the grief and the 4 days without making any of them the final word. The death is real. The 4 days are real. And the I am, who is the resurrection, is standing outside the tomb, asking for the stone to be moved, because the death is not the final word. The practical application. The meaning-making work of the grief does not require the resolution of the why. It requires the integration of the loss into the larger story. The story that has the resurrection and the life at its center, the story in which the death is not the ending, but the chapter before the ending. The question is not why did this person die? The question is, what does it mean that the one who is the resurrection and the life is standing outside the tomb? The third concept is the psychology of hope in the context of loss. The hope researcher C.R. Snyder and colleagues identified 2 components of hope: the belief that a pathway exists to the desired goal, and the sense of agency, the belief that one has the energy and capacity to pursue that pathway. Hopelessness is not the absence of the desire for the goal. It is the conviction that no pathway exists, or that one lacks the capacity to pursue it. The grief produces both forms of hopelessness. The death closes the pathway, the specific, concrete, completely real pathway of the future with the person who has died. The relationship, the shared experiences, the plans that included the deceased, these pathways are closed. And the grief depletes the agency. The energy and the capacity to pursue new pathways is exhausted by the carrying of the loss. The I am the resurrection, and the life reopens the pathway. Not the pathway that was closed, the specific future with the specific person that the death ended. The pathway that the death cannot close. The participation in the existence of the I am who holds the bond on the other side. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. The pathway does not end at the grave. The pathway continues on the other side of the grave, in a form that the grief cannot currently see, but that the I am declares is real. And it provides the agency. The agency of the person who has the hope is not the human willpower of the person who generates the energy to pursue the new pathway. It is the I can do all things through him who gives me strength. The agency that comes from the one who is the source of the life, who sustains the bereaved through the season when the human agency is exhausted, who carries the person on the shoulders through the grief the way the Good Shepherd carries the lost sheep home. The practical application. The grief does not have to produce the hope by itself. The hope is available from the outside, from the I am who is the resurrection and the life, who provides the pathway and the agency that the grief has depleted. Bring the closed pathway to the one who opens pathways. Bring the depleted agency to the one who gives strength. The hope is not generated, it is received. The story of Lazarus is alive in your life right now. There is a woman in the 4 days. The specific, private, completely real 4 days of the person who has lost someone recently, whose grief is still in the acute phase, whose the world has changed and will never be the same, has not yet become the settled knowledge of the long grief, but is still the daily, hourly, minute-by-minute discovery. The mornings are the worst. The mornings when the first few seconds of waking are ordinary, and then the remembering arrives, and the ordinary ends. She sent word to Jesus. She did not know she was sending word to Jesus. It does not feel like prayer. It does not feel like faith. It feels like the specific, wordless, completely necessary reaching of the person who has run out of resources and who is reaching toward the one she hopes might be able to do something with the situation that she cannot. The Lord, the one you love, is sick, is the grief's version of prayer. Not the eloquent theological petition, but the simple, direct, "This is happening, and I do not know what to do with it." He knows. The message reached him. The grief reached him. The one you love was loved by him, and the loving is still present, present across the 4 days, present in the tomb, present in the weeping that happens when he sees the tears. See how he loved him. The specific person who is in the 4 days is loved specifically. The grief is received specifically. The tears are seen specifically. And the question that is coming, the question that comes to every person in the 4 days, eventually, in the form it takes for that specific person, is the question he asked Martha outside the tomb. Do you believe this? Not tonight. Tonight is the 4 days. Tonight is the grief. Tonight is the Jesus who wept before he spoke. The question will come. The stone will be moved. For now, the grief is received. The tears are seen. And the one who is the resurrection and the life is already standing outside the tomb. There is a man whose grief is years old. He would not call it grief anymore. It has become the texture of the life, the specific, settled, completely integrated loss that is no longer the acute 4 days grief, but the long-term changed landscape of the person who has learned to live in the world from which the one they loved has been absent for 3 years, or 5 years, or 15. The grief does not arrive in the morning anymore with the freshness of the 4 days. It arrives in the specific, unexpected, completely ambushing moments. The song, the smell, the date on the calendar, the reaching for the phone to tell the person something they would have found funny before remembering. The grief is quieter now, and some days he wonders whether the quieting is the healing or the distance, whether the person is becoming more settled in the absence or simply more habituated to it, whether the continuing bond is the healthy grief or the clinging, whether the faith he holds about what is on the other side of the tomb is genuine or the consolation that the grieving person requires in order to continue functioning. I know that my Redeemer lives. Job said it from the ash heap, from the specific, long-term, completely settled loss that had become the texture of his life, not from the 4 days, but from the years of the absence. I know. The knowing across time is the knowing that the I Am, who is the resurrection and the life sustains, not as the emotional certainty of the person who can feel it every day, but as the settled conviction of the person who has returned to it enough times across the years of the quieter grief that it has become the ground rather than the feeling. The bond continues. The pathway is open on the other side, and the long grief is held by the same one who wept at the tomb, who holds the specific, individual, completely real person who is no longer present in the form they once were, in the form that is on the other side of the stone. And there is a person anticipating the loss. The grief has not arrived yet in the form of the death. It has arrived in the form of the knowledge that the death is coming, the diagnosis, the prognosis, the specific, terrible clarity of the medical information that has replaced the future that was planned. The anticipatory grief, the grief of the person who is in Bethany before Jesus arrives, watching the one they love move toward the tomb while the word is still being sent. Lord, the one you love is sick. The word is being sent now in the form of the prayer that is barely coherent enough to be called prayer, in the reaching toward the one who might be able to do something with this. The 4 days have not happened yet. The tomb has not been sealed yet. The stone is not in place yet. And the grief is already present. The grief of the person who knows what is coming and who is already in the changed landscape before the change has fully arrived. He received the message about Lazarus, and he stayed 2 more days. The staying is the hardest part of the story, the part that looks like the abandonment, the too late, the not in time. But the staying was not the absence of the love. The staying was the preparation for the arrival that would show what the resurrection and the life actually meant. The arrival that would come after the 4 days rather than before the death, so that the one who was raised would be raised all the way. The timing is his. The love is not in question. And the I am, who is the resurrection and the life, is already moving toward Bethany. The formation of the grief that is held by the resurrection and the life is slow. Grief does not transform quickly. The tradition has always known this. The 40 years in the wilderness, the lamentations of the Psalms, the years of Job's ash heap. The grief that is genuine takes the time that it takes. And the transformation that the I am the resurrection and the life produces is not the shortening of the grief. It is the holding of the grief, the specific, gradual, genuinely different quality of the grief that is carried in the presence of the one who wept at the tomb. The first thing that changes is the relationship with the weeping. The person who has received the permission that the Jesus wept gives, who understands that the one who is the resurrection and the life wept before he spoke, who has been shown that the grief is not the failure of the faith, finds that the weeping changes quality. The weeping that was the evidence of the inadequate trust becomes the weeping that is received by the one who wept. The grief that was the thing that faith was supposed to have healed becomes the grief that the faith holds. The two are not the opposites, they are the companions. The second thing that changes is the experience of the continuing bond. The person who holds the resurrection and the life statement alongside the grief finds, across the seasons of the holding, that the continuing bond becomes more sustainable. The relationship with the person who has died does not have to be managed in the direction of the detachment. It can be held in the prayer, in the memory, in the specific and ongoing relationship with the one who holds the person on the other side. The bond continues. The I am holds it on the other end. The third thing that changes is the relationship with the do you believe this? The question that Jesus asked Martha is the question that comes to every grieving person eventually. And the answer is not required to be certain before the question can be answered. Martha's answer, "Yes, Lord, I believe," is the answer that holds the belief and the tears simultaneously. The I believe that is immediately followed by the falling at his feet and the if you had been here. The faith does not eliminate the grief. The faith holds the grief. And the holding across the seasons of the returning to the question and the returning to the answer produces the settled knowing. I know that my Redeemer lives. That is not dependent on the feeling, but on the ground. The fourth change is the hope for the other side of the stone. The person who has been carrying the I am the resurrection and the life across the seasons of the grief finds that the hope for what is on the other side of the stone becomes more real. not less uncertain, but more present, more personal, more specifically about the specific person who is on the other side. The continuing bond becomes the hope in a specific direction, and the direction is the one who called Lazarus by name, who called him out of the specific tomb of his specific death by the specific voice that the specific man recognized. Lazarus, come out. The name will be called, the bond will be completed, and the yet shall he live will become the seeing. And now, let everything grow very still. The grief is in the room tonight, whatever form it takes. The 4 days, the long years, the anticipation of what is coming. The grief is real, and the loss is real, and the specific, irreplaceable, completely particular person who is absent is genuinely absent, and the absence has genuine weight. There is no rushing past it. There is no theological bypassing of it. Jesus did not bypass it. He stood outside the tomb and wept. The grief is received tonight by the one who wept at the tomb of his friend. Let the weeping be received. Jesus wept. The grief of Mary and the mourners reached him, and he wept. The grief that you are carrying tonight, in whatever form it has taken, however long it has been carried, however the 4 days have extended into the years, it reaches him. The one who is the resurrection and the life is not above the grief. He entered it. He wept in it. He stood in the specific, fully human experience of the person who loved someone and who lost them and who stood outside the tomb with the tears running. See how he loved him. The grief is received by the one who knows what it costs from the inside, not as the observer of the human grief, but as the one who has felt it. Let the I am be held. I am the resurrection and the life. The two claims together. The resurrection, the reversal of the death that is real, and the tomb that is sealed, and the 4 days that have passed. And the life, the participation in the existence of the one who cannot be interrupted. The everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. The hope does not require the grief to end before it is available. The hope is available in the grief. On the other side of the tears, outside the tomb, standing with the question, do you believe this? The question is being asked tonight, in this room, in the dark. Do you believe this? Let the answer be whatever it honestly is. Martha believed and wept. The yes, Lord, I believe, and the tears were simultaneous. The faith does not have to be certain before the question can be answered. It has to be honest. The honest faith, the I believe, help my unbelief, is the faith that the one who asked the question receives. He knows what the grief has cost the faith. He asked the question anyway, and he moves the stone regardless of whether the answer is fully confident or fragile, and held with both hands in the dark. The stone will be moved. The name will be called, and the yet shall he live will become the seeing. I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. John 11:25. Jesus wept. John 11:35. Lazarus, come out. John 11:43. He will swallow up death forever. Yahweh will wipe away the tears from all faces. Isaiah 25:8. I know that my Redeemer lives, and that in the end he will stand on the earth. And after my skin has been destroyed, yet in my flesh I will see God. Job 19:25-26.